Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Shelby Bowen, and today this video is all about how to reconnect with yourself after going through spiritual abuse. I first want to start with a verse that you don't often hear about, and that is Jeremiah 27. And this is when Jeremiah actually accuses God of being a spiritual abuser. I think so often in the church system, we feel like we are a crappy Christian if we bring all of these deep down thoughts and emotions that we have to God. Almost like, he's so holy, we can't bring that to him. But here's the thing. God can handle it. And what's not good is to deep down have a grievance against the Lord and not being able to walk through that with him. So I'm going to read chapter 20, 7 through 18. So that's quite a lot of verses. So pull out your Bible, pause the video, get yourself situated, and I'm reading out the Amplified. Whatever version you have is great. So here we go. Jeremiah said, "O Lord, you have persuaded me and I was deceived. You are stronger than I and you have prevailed. I am the laughing stock all day long. Everyone mocks me. For whenever I speak, I must shout out. I shout violence and destruction because the word of the Lord has become to me a reprimand and a mockery and has brought me insult all day long." Wow. If I say I will not remember him or speak his name anymore, then my heart becomes a burning fire shut up in my bones, and I am weary of enduring and holding it in. I cannot endure it, nor contain it any longer. For I have heard the whispering and defaming words of many, terror on every side. Denounce him, let us denounce him. All my familiar and trusted friends, those who are watching for my fall, say perhaps he will be persuaded and deceived. Then we will overcome him and take our revenge on him. But the Lord is with me as a dread champion, one to greatly be feared. Therefore my persecutors will stumble and not overcome me. They will be completely shamed for what they have not acted wisely and have failed in their schemes. Their eternal dishonor will never be forgotten. But, O Lord of hosts, you who examine the righteous, who see the heart and mind, let me see your vengeance on them. For to you I have committed my cause. Sing to the Lord, praise the Lord, for he has rescued the life of the needy one from the hand of the evildoers. Cursed be the day on which I was born. We got a lot of back and forth going on, a lot of emotions here. So verse 15, cursed be the man who brought the news to my father, saying, a son has been born to you, making him very glad. And let that man be like the cities which the Lord overthrew without regret. Let him hear an outcry in the morning and a shout of alarm at noon, because he did not kill me before my birth, so that my mother might have been my grave, and her womb always pregnant. Why did I come out of the womb to see trouble and sorrow, so that my days have been filled with shame? Wow. There's a lot that Jeremiah was going through there, and I think a lot that we can probably all relate to. Okay, so I first want to say that in the midst of Jeremiah questioning God as literally being a spiritual abuser to him, he still clung to his faith. He still walked with God through those questions. When all of his friends over here were saying to leave everything, that you've been deceived, they're all whispering all this stuff in his ear, he knew he should not go over there with those friends. And this is what I think is super important takeaway in the midst of wrestling those questions, because I think that we all have those things like, God, why did you let this happen to me? Like, why did you bring me here and then this happened? Like, I don't understand why you would do that to me. And we feel like we have flawed faith if we raise those things to the Lord. But Jeremiah did. He literally said, you have deceived me, God. And I think the most important thing that we can take away is that he continued to walk with God in the midst of that. It was worse to him to turn away from everything he believed, to renounce God completely, than to just continue to bring these hard questions to the Lord. He was cursing the day he was born. He was cursing the man who told his father that he had a son. And I think that we can all find ourselves in those moments of despair where we're like, why am I even here? Why did you even put me through that? What am I doing, in my life? And I first want to say that's a normal experience to have. Those are all normal feelings, and God is not afraid of them. And I certainly do not think that he's mad at you for feeling that way. And he wants to walk through it with you, because the only way you are going to find the true character and nature of God is from him revealing it to you. So I wanted to start the video with that verse just to give you a little insight that even Jeremiah back in the day was feeling the things that we feel to this day. And so I want you to take that into consideration just as we move forward. Brush off that shame that you have for those questions and those feelings you have towards God. Every time those thoughts come in, just remember, Jeremiah continued to walk with God, and he still had those hard questions, and I'm going to do that, and it's going to be okay. So let's jump in a little bit more to the disconnection from self that we experience through the abuse of Scripture. And a big one that I have seen in the lives of my clients, even in, churches that I've been in, is the Romans 12 verse, which is the idea of offering your body as a living sacrifice. And how often spiritual abusers use that verse of offering your body as living sacrifice to get you to serve an inordinate amount of hours, sacrificing your physical health, your mental health, your personal dreams and goals and desires to go after serving somebody else's mission. And that type of manipulation, where we believe that we have to offer ourselves, our physical and mental health as a living sacrifice for the sake of the kingdom, we are skewing our perception of everything that is good and holy to God. And that was never his intention. His intention was never for a maybe spiritual abuser in a relationship, a spiritual abuser that was a pastor or a head of a ministry over you. It was never God's intention for them to use that verse to make you do their bidding. It is so hard to leave. And that is the first step, really, with dissociation and coming back to yourself, is getting out of that environment. And I understand that it can be so hard to leave, whether a relationship or a church where spiritual abuse is taking place, because you have been lured and entangled into that relationship as a pastor and a congregant, into a relationship of pastor, maybe a staff member, or maybe it is a dating relationship, whatever that looks like. Maybe it's a marital relationship where spiritual abuse is taking place. The first step we have to do is to remove ourselves from that situation. And I'm going to be honest with you, it is normal for it to take time for you to feel comfortable going back in an environment like that again. It is normal for you to feel like going to church is really triggering for you. And it's okay if you need to take a break from going to a church building on a Sunday morning for a little while, because it is too overwhelming and causing too many trauma triggers for you. It's all right to take a break. And I actually encourage it. I talk about this in my interview with Suzette. We talk about how, unfortunately, the church is known to kill its wounded. And you might have gone through spiritual abuse in a church, and your first instinct might be to run to another church and tell them what happened and look for healing from, a staff member or a pastor to pray for you. And unfortunately, what happens to so many people time and time again is they look at you and they paint you as you are the troublemaker. And it can only pile on more hurt and trauma to somebody who is already down. And so it is so crucial that you are careful with who you share your very vulnerable life moments with, You don't want to cast your pearls before swine. Spiritual abuse is one of the, if not the most impactful abuses that you can go through, is because it hits you at the core. It hits your soul. Your very soul is what's impacted by spiritual abuse. And it is so impactful because our spiritual connection to God and our salvation is everything to us. And when we go through spiritual abuse and we feel like that is being impacted, that salvation, that connection to God, it is detrimental to that person's life. And it is so often downplayed in the church or not talked about and perpetuated in a lot of church system cultures. So be careful. Find yourself a trusted group of people. Work with a professional. Don't just cast your pearls before swine. Make sure you know who is among you. You know who's around you. So we're going to jump into some signs and symptoms now. So here are some signs and symptoms that you are dissociating. And I'm going to give you a quick kind of definition of dissociation. So you may feel disconnected from yourself and the world around you. You might feel like you are separate from your body, maybe from God. You're separate from God. You might feel like the world around you isn't real. So some of those symptoms would be like you have an out-of-body experience. You feel numb, or you're experiencing emotional detachment. I know the emotional detachment was one that I experienced where I left a situation, a spiritually abusive place, and I was like waiting to cry, because crying is amazing. Crying is such a release of pent up emotions. And so when it finally reaches to the surface, we got all these emotions building, and then we cry, and it's a beautiful release that we can have. And I remember I literally could not cry. I could not cry. It took me finally processing the trauma of those events for me to let all those emotions out and just cry. And that was definitely a dissociation that I had from my emotions. Lacking a sense of identity or a sense of who you are. Definitely experienced that one. I know so many people have, especially with the verses of dying to yourself and pick up your cross daily, and, not understanding the true meaning of what God's talking about there. And forgetting certain events or personal information, feeling little physical pain, having clear different identities, as in dissociative identity disorder. So this video, by the way, is not trying to, I am not here. And if you're listening to these things, this is not meant to diagnose you with any disorder. This is just supposed to help us realize when we might be disconnected from ourselves. And if you read those things and you're like, I identify with a lot of those, I would recommend that you seek a mental health professional, such as a therapist or somebody who specializes in trauma, to help you walk through those things. The next step of healing after leaving that situation is acknowledgement. Like Jeremiah, we are going to recognize that we are upset and we have all these questions, and that maybe we feel very disconnected from who we are, and we feel very disconnected from our relationship with God. We are going to acknowledge those things, and we're going to accept, hey, that's where I'm at right now, and it's okay. This isn't where I'm living. This isn't where I'm going to stay, but this is where I'm at right now, and I'm going to give myself some grace. And then we're going to ground ourselves in the present moment. So these are the next part that I'm going to go through are more practical tools that you can implement. So ground yourself in the present moment. How I do this is engaging my senses, going for a walk, feeling the breeze on my skin, maybe getting in a warm bath with a bunch of essential oils, or drinking your favorite relaxing drink. Make yourself your favorite coffee, your favorite tea, whatever that is, and engage your senses and ground yourself in the present moment. Mindfulness. So even to this day, I will talk about certain things to certain people, and I don't share a lot online just because, again, it's important that we are careful who we share things with, because a lot of people aren't going to be very gentle or empathetic with your story, and it's just unfortunately how the world is, and even how a lot of Christians are. So we just protect our hearts. Even to this day, when I talk about certain things, I start to get all these feelings in my body. I start sweating. I start to feel like freezing cold and shivering, but I'm sweating at the same time. All that is a PTSD response for what I've gone through. And my body does not know, hey, we're good. I'm not in trauma anymore. Like, we're good. You don't have to continue to do that. But the body keeps the score. The body keeps the score. And it does not realize when the trauma doesn't exist anymore. So here's what I do in those moments is I just take my hands, I put it on my heart, just kind of like feel your heart beating. It's that mindfulness, it's gratitude, and I just focus on my breaths. So I would breathe in and breathe out and just focus on that. And you can do that with me too right now if you need to. And you just feel like peace wash over you. And then what I'll do is I'll speak to my body. And I'll tell it that I'm safe, that God is with me, that there's no reason to be afraid. And I'll just speak the things over myself, which is taking my thoughts captive, taking any negative thoughts captive. And sometimes they're not even negative thoughts. Our body just reacts that way. But I just speak life over myself, life over my body. Okay, the next thing and the final thing we want to talk about is self-love. And self-love is very important. And yes, we live in a world where everything is self, and selfishness, and always worrying about myself. That's not what we're talking about here. This is different. So be open-minded with me as we talk about self-love. To the degree that you have compassion on yourself, that degree you will have compassion on others. And there are so many people out there who clearly do not give themselves much compassion because they are not very nice. And trauma can do one of two things. It can make you very empathetic and transparent and compassionate towards other people, or it can make you really angry and really bitter. And we want the first part. We don't want to be angry and bitter. And the way we get there is by confronting trauma, healing from it, confronting all those emotions, and being compassionate on ourselves. Okay, so when you give compassion on yourself, this is what I want you to do. Clearly recognize what is going on in here. What is going on inside? Clearly recognize it. And look at yourself with a kind, open, and loving heart. Look at all those things, the darkness, the goodness, all the things about yourself that you love and all the things about yourself that you hate. And look at yourself in the good, the bad, the ugly with kindness, with compassion, with openness. And sometimes when things come up inside of you and you remember something you did in the past, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I said that. I can't believe I did that. I'm so embarrassed by that. This is another good time where you can develop a friendship with yourself and give compassion to your younger self. Give compassion to the person who went through spiritual abuse and maybe didn't recognize the signs and symptoms. Give compassion to them because they did not know what you know now. Isn't that beautiful? Be a friend to them. Tell them it's okay. You're going to be okay. We are not defined by our negative thoughts. We are not defined by things that have happened to us or things that we have done. We are not defined by that. You can look at all of that with neutrality, with openness and kindness, and realize that that does not define you. Okay, I hope today's video encouraged you wherever you're at, gave you some practical tips to step forward into the healing process, and a little bit of encouragement that if Jeremiah can call God a spiritual abuser and still walk with him and be okay, it is okay for you to bring your hard questions to God and continue to walk with him, and he will guide your steps. He will guide your path and continue to reveal his true character to you. Love you guys. See you next time.